This podcast series of short takes is about my experience with travel, food, and other everyday happenings. For my English learners out there, a take is a colloquial term that means opinion. So basically, this is going to be my opinion on jet lag and also a little bit about my experience. So we'll talk about jet lag today, how I experienced it, and what I learned as well after I looked up a little bit more about it. So my experience this time with jet lag was because we were moving back from Japan to the United States. We lived in Japan for almost a year and a half. And while we were there, we got adjusted to our time there and our sleeping time there. But Japan is about 14 hours ahead of the United States, specifically the East Coast. And when we were flying back, we knew that our time could be a little messed up. So basically what happened was we flew from Japan to Korea, and we ended up having a very long layover. Our layover was about 18 hours, which meant instead of taking, let's say, a 26-hour flight with a usual layover of 2 to 4 hours, we ended up taking a much longer, roughly 36-hour flight, or 36-hour travel. So instead of 26 hours, it was 36 hours. Usually we don't stay overnight in another country, just to be able to keep our rhythm for sleeping going. But this time around, that didn't happen. So what that meant was that when we arrived in Korea, it was still the same time in Japan, and we went to sleep at the same time. But when we woke up the next day, we were on a 10 a.m. flight. And by the time we arrived in New York, it was 11:30 a.m. on the same day that we left Korea, right? So we left, for example, Friday, and we arrived on Friday at 11:30. And so what that meant was we basically reset our clock, but we had been awake for 16 hours at this point. And so we had to stay awake for another 8 hours in order to fall asleep properly, which would mean we would have been up for 24 hours. It wasn't going to happen. So it took us quite a long time to adjust. Usually, when we do take the 24-hour flights, it takes us maybe a day or two to adjust. But this time, it took me a full week. So for a whole week, I had been keeping very strange sleeping times and would fall asleep during the day and wake up in the middle of the day and then stay up very late into the night and then go to sleep and then wake up very early in the morning. It took quite a while to finally have the rhythm I have had now for the past few days, which is to fall asleep around 11 or midnight, and then I wake up around 6 a.m., 7 a.m., which is good because it still gives me the schedule I want, but it also means that my cycle is finally back to normal. My sleeping cycle is back to normal. So it took quite a while to adjust this time. So basically, the way I feel about jet lag is that it is an unfortunate side effect of travel. I love to travel, but I also know that, it's going to happen. Usually if I fly from, say, California to New York or New York to California or California to Mexico, it's not terrible and the jet lag is not too bad. Or even if I fly to Europe or Africa, for example, the jet lag is not too bad at all. And usually I adjust within a day or two. But it is very difficult when there is a 14-hour time difference and the travel time is longer. Or when we have to spend the next day, being awake or being asleep, depending on what this time zone you're going to be in the future is. I think what would have been cool is if I had, for example, stayed awake 2 nights before and changed my sleeping schedule while I was in Tokyo. But because of Corona, unfortunately, a lot of things are closed in Tokyo at night now, so we couldn't really do too many things. Otherwise, I think that would have been a fun experiment to just sleep all day and then party at night, or just go out at night and experience what Japan has to offer in the evening, specifically Tokyo. Maybe in the future that's something I can do, but that for now, I was not able to use that method of battling jet lag. So now, talking about jet lag, I decided to do a little bit of research, not too much. According to the Mayo Clinic, and this is on their website, jet lag occurs when you cross 2 or more time zones, and because it puts your internal clock or your circadian rhythm, and that's the part that regulates when you go to sleep and when you wake up, out of sync with the new time that you're in. So if you leave New York at 4 p.m. and you arrive in Paris at 7 a.m., your clock still thinks it's 1 a.m., which is why sometimes what'll happen if you're on a 4 p.m. flight, you'll notice that the flight attendants will come around and ask everyone to please close their windows, and they'll turn all the lights off to make it seem dark, so that when you do land in Paris at 7 a.m., you do feel like you actually slept. So the Mayo Clinic says that the best way to help with jet lag is to get somewhere very early, get plenty of rest before the trip. This way you're not sleep deprived and exhausted and tired and completely out of whack when you arrive. Adjust your schedule before you leave, which is what we talked about. So definitely something we want to try in the future. And regulating light exposure. So changing that as you go along. Staying hydrated and trying to get as much sleep on the plane as possible. So what's my final take on jet lag? I think for me it's going to have to be if it is something that's going to impact a very short trip, I'm not going to be too happy about it, and I'm going to want to do everything in my power to regulate what I do and to regulate my sleep schedule ahead of time, so that when I do arrive at my destination, I have all the time that I can use in order to have fun and enjoy myself there. If it's a place where I know I'm going to be there for quite a long time, I think it's okay if it takes me a week to adjust. I hope I don't have to do that again. But if that's the case, that simply is the case. And then I have quite a while after that to enjoy my time there. So that doesn't bother me too much, as it probably would if it was a short trip. So overall, even though it took me a lot longer to recover from jet lag this time, I'm happy to finally be back on a regular schedule and look forward to exploring the East Coast on this new schedule and telling you more about it. All right, that's all for today for Adara's Take. I'll see you next time. This podcast series of short takes is about my experience with travel, food, and other everyday